So good afternoon, everybody. Welcome again to week 3 of our Thrive series. Thank you all for being here today. I wasn't sure with the holiday if it would mess up your plans or anything like that, but thank you very much for turning up and being here today. It's going to be another excellent session, I have no doubt. All right, so this week is all about psychology. We have with us today Alicia Hoyte, who's a clinical psychologist, and we have some riveting questions and things to discuss. But first, just want to go through some of the rules, although I know most of the people here have been here already. And I like that I'm starting to see the same names.
Same faces.
It's starting to be like a family, which is good. But one thing is to mute your mics apart from the speakers, just so we don't have, dogs barking in the background and those kind of things. And also to, you could turn your video off. That was one of the things that was happening when I was trying to record the video last time, was that you would see other people's video. But I think this week I'm figuring out how to do it. So hopefully this week we can have the recording done proper. And apart from that, if you have any questions, you could put it in the chat, or when it's the question and answer time, use the little icon for hands up, or ask and we'll answer all your questions. If we can't answer it today, we'll answer it afterwards via email or whatever means. All right, so for today's highlight, fittingly, what I wanted to just touch on was the whole topic of mental health. And it's come up in the last 3 months since we've been home, maybe last 2 months. I've heard different moments from a couple of parents that maybe their child is having different behaviors that it didn't have before, or if it's something that maybe they used to do when they were younger and they're seeing that behavior coming back, or they're seeing a lot of different things that they've not seen before and they don't know how to deal with it. And it's obviously very frustrating, especially if you know that your child isn't doing these things anymore. Why is it coming back now? And there have also been parents who've been talking about regression, and they're seeing like that your child is capable of doing something, but for some reason you're not seeing them doing what they're capable of. And I think a lot of it is related to stress. And it is because right now, as much as adults are stressed out with COVID and stressed out with jobs and, being outside and everything that's going on, children are just as stressed as the adults. Because if you think of it from their perspective, they had to completely stop school, therapy, extracurricular activities, everything all at once. And where we would be able to watch news and follow everything that's going on and make our own judgment. For children, some of them might be too young to either understand, or they would just get the information passed to them. Okay, school is done, that's it. So they didn't have a chance to process it. They didn't have a chance to say goodbye to friends. All the swimming and everything that they were accustomed to completely stopped. And suddenly they're home, can't go outside, and can't do the things that they like. And for them, this stress is manifesting as all these little behaviors, because they either don't know how to explain to you, I'm feeling stressed, or they might know that they're stressed. They just know that something's not okay. So I think for now, at least, you could be a little bit lenient with certain things, like maybe just keep an eye on their mental health for now, and make sure that now is a time to support rather than offering punishment if they do something that they shouldn't be doing. Now is really a time to kind of look and see, well, all right, why might they be doing that? Do I need to look at the bigger picture, give them a little more hugs, a little more love, explain things to them in a way that they could understand, so that they could feel a little more comfortable in a time where nothing is comfortable for anybody, right? So that was my little mental health highlight, just to check on your child's mental health a little bit. One other thing, earlier this week, I posted on Google Kids' Facebook page this article that basically said that education is not what we need to focus on right now, is mental health, your child's mental health. And I fully agree with that, because the exact same day I posted that, earlier that day, I was kind of thinking back to, what about children who had cancer or something like that and had to be out of school for a whole term or more than one term? If you kind of look back for the rest of their lives on how they, when they grew up, how things happen, I'm sure that most of them were able to catch back up at some point with schoolwork, with education. But on the mental health side of things, something that happens now could stay with that child for the rest of their lives. And it could be damaging. So it's a little bit more important now, I think, to just take the time to make sure that your child is feeling supported, and that they have an outlet for being able to express how they feel, and know that it's okay to not feel okay, but still have that safe space with you, with parents. Right, so that was my little thing for today. Now let's get into Alicia. Alicia is clapping me here. I'm just gonna go through her bio. Alicia Hoyte, she's a clinical psychologist. She gave me the years that she graduated, but I'm not gonna bust up files or anything like that at all. She's a master's level clinical psychologist. She graduated from Barry University in Florida. And she's been in private practice since 2003, providing psychoeducational assessments. She's the mother of 5 children, including 3 teens, and she's the founder of Caribbean Parenting Initiative that promotes positive parenting in the Caribbean. She comes from a family of gardeners, including her brother, who's a horticulturist, but she has always been the one to kill plants. I totally relate to that. And finally, although in this COVID season, she has had a thriving background. So something's working there. And one fun thing she likes to do is to take long walks alone. So welcome, Alicia, to our program. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me. I think I'm going to stick to that bio. Sounds more fun.
Yeah, you should. So last time we were talking to Dr. Brass about development and all those kind of things. And today is really just to get into the reason why I asked you to come on this week was because I wanted to do it where maybe the pediatrician is the first point that you go to a diagnosis, and
Yes.
then the next part of it is what happens after you get the diagnosis. This is when you have all of those emotions to go through and trying to figure out what to do when. So for you today is really to chat about the whole process of grief and going through diagnosis, labels, and just the mental health side of things. So first thing that I wanted to touch on was just about when you get that new diagnosis and you really don't know how to manage those feelings of what you wanted and expected and the reality of things. So how can you help parents to navigate that and those emotions?
Thank you, Aliyah. Let me say that usually my relationship with pediatricians is that they have done their examination of the child and they've identified, okay, it's not something medical or physical that they're looking at.
Right.
And then they send them to me to do the assessment and to start
Right.
making that diagnosis. A lot of the time, that's the relationship I've had with pediatricians, and it's a beautiful one. So often they're coming to that realization with me as we do the assessment and we start to pick up. Sometimes I'm still referring them on to double check certain areas or go to an OT and so on. And they're having to really grapple with, a lot of the times they've kind of already had a sense.
Right.
They've kind of already had a sense that, yeah, something's wrong. That's why we're looking for help. The parents who may have it more difficult will be the ones whose teachers have said, this child has something going on, you need to check it out. And for themselves, whether they missed it or they weren't thinking about that. And so if you've gotten a diagnosis about a child having, let's say, typically we're talking about the neurodevelopmental disorders, yeah?
Yeah.
ADHD, learning disability, ASD, all of which an assessment, psychoeducational assessment would begin to identify, and that's what I do. When you've gotten that, you want to be fairly comfortable with what the clinician has told you. So I'm kind of going back a little bit because sometimes you just have to be, you want to make sure that you got somebody who's reputable in the first place,
Correct.
right? Who knew what they were doing. And I don't know why, but in this COVID time, we're seeing a lot more persons kind of starting to offer services that you have to be a little concerned about.
I have
Yeah?
for next week just a thing for, sorry to
You're doing
interrupt you,
that?
but
No,
my
no.
highlight for next week, I already know what it's going to be, and it's touching just on that.
Yeah, please, because, and that's not what I came here for, but I have to say, you need to be wary. Yeah. So sometimes you have to be able, let me just say, being a parent of a child with any kind of special need gives you an opportunity to become your really best self, because you learn to get in touch with yourself and really be honest with yourself. So sometimes you have to start from, do I feel comfortable with this person's competence to diagnose? Right? Do I have reason to ask a question? Did they answer my question sufficiently? Do I think that they took all of the child's history into consideration to come up with this? Yeah. I've also met, so you got to start there. And if there's a question, go ask somebody else, you know, to feel more comfortable with it. So yeah, it's hard enough to hear a hard news about your child. But if it's, especially our mommy, especially if it's just not sitting, then go ask somebody else. You know, feel free to do that. Check the report with somebody else. I've met, in our Caribbean, we're very faith-based. I've met families who have difficulty accepting the diagnosis because I've had one person say to me, Miss Hoyte, are you a believer? And I said, yes, I am. That doesn't stop this from being your reality, and you have to kind of work it through. Yeah. So sometimes our own faith gets in the way, or we're so positive, we're such positive people that hearing all this negativity about our child can really hurt. You know, I had a mother blast me out once because I said her child was going to have such a difficult time and it's not true. And, you know, she has to live that. So I left her with that. But accepting a diagnosis, a really difficult one, is a grieving process. It's a grieving process, right? Like I said, you may have had a niggling sense that something was up. That's why you came looking for help. So sometimes for a lot of parents, there's relief. You know, sometimes parents are crying with me in feedback because now they know. But a lot of times it's a grief, because I now have to accept that this baby that I've waited on for so long, that, you know, was healthy all through the pregnancy, and now something's happened at the end, whatever it is not who I thought they were going to be, or can be the same person I thought they were going to be. And so, Ali, I want to make sure you're not hearing the mowing outside. Are you hearing anything?
No,
Beautiful.
not in a way that is taken away from you.
I don't want to distract from you. So yeah, it's a grief process, and it's a loss. And let's be honest about that.
Yeah.
Let's just be honest about that, you know? And so parents have to take the time to speak their truth. Speak their truth, you know, cry their tears with another adult, with the other parent. You know, if it's really going to be a rough journey, get a therapist and journey through what you had expected and what your reality is now. There's no way around grieving. And when you're journeying through that, you can come to a place of accepting this new normal. This is my beautiful child. Yeah.
To grieve.
You have to grieve. You have to admit, you know, okay, I know we only have 20 minutes, so I wouldn't go off on all the stories, right?
Go ahead.
But with my eldest son, at one point, I had to tell him, I said, you know, my whole life I wanted a big brother for myself. And when I found out my first child was a boy, I was so excited because I wanted a big brother who would look after the others and be protective, and God bless him, he's none of that. He's not that. And I remember at one point having to stop and say, and you know, we did have him assessed and he didn't have his own diagnosis. But at one point I had to stop and say, okay, I really have to figure out how to love you for who you are, not for who I always wished you would be when I had you.
Right.
And that's a journey, right? When you're on that journey, because I can't say that journey finishes, When you've started that journey, you can begin to look at this child, and everything I'm going to say after this, you're going to hear me talk about strengths focus. I need to now look at who is this child and what can this child do? What does this child want to do, and how can we help them get there? But you have to be honest with yourself first. You know?
Step one is making sure that you go through the grief process.
You're angry, you're hurt, you're sad, yeah. And for some parents, it's grief, it's anger. Eh? I know one mom who, she knows the doctor who did whatever he did or didn't do what he was supposed to do, and that perfectly healthy baby came out with palsy.
Yeah.
Right? And she has to now, each time she has to struggle with this child, she's back in that anger. We have to be honest with ourselves.
Unfortunately, I know the anger thing, there are a lot of parents I've come across in the last few years who, I mean, they have right to be angry, because when I hear the stories of the birth and stuff,
you be angry.
Get angry.
Yeah.
And but for some of them, though, kudos to them. They are just like, they went through the grief process.
They do what you have,
you know.
Yeah, this is what I have to do.
Doing what we have to do now.
Yeah.
All right, so.
Angry every day. I feel you.
Yes, yeah.
I feel it.
And, well, their parents, there's a parent in particular, hearing their story it was really hard to hear the whole story, because it wasn't cerebral palsy or anything like that. It was something to do with the child was sick and went to hospital, and the hospital did all sorts of things. And from that, the child had a brain injury. And in asking her different questions, they said, did you ever try to pursue this legally? And even with that, they did, but there was so many things that happened that prevented them from being able to give their side of the story properly. But this family, like you would never know they went through all of that, because they were just like, okay, this is what we have to do. We just doing it. And it was so amazing for me to see them so calm and just so, getting on with things, as opposed to being angry all the time.
Yeah,
but it's important to acknowledge.
The main thing is to be honest with yourself. I saw someone say she didn't finish the grief process. I wish that I had no children. Hi, darling. I know this young lady. It's hard. We can get derailed on all these different roads in your short space of time. But it's hard. And I think what we're trying to say is, in order to give your child your best, because we're decent human beings, we want to give our children our best. To do that, we have to first start with taking care of ourselves and being honest.
Right.
This is hard. I'm angry. They messed up. I wish I had done something else. I feel bad about, wishing I didn't have kids because it's so difficult. Let's be honest. And let's trust ourselves to get up again next morning and go again and do the best for our kids, because that's who we are. Yeah.
All right. Well, on that kind of topic, let's move on to the labeling. I have my own thoughts on labeling, and in some ways, I think much like you said, there is a space for it when you think about things like getting services and school.
Yeah, that's the main thing. Yeah.
And just as you just said, for some people and for some parents, it's a relief to have that label, because after kind of thinking, well, what is this? I don't know. When you finally get that diagnosis and have the label, you think, oh, okay, finally,
yes,
now I know what it is. But for some, well, generally speaking, especially here, you put a label onto anybody and it's seen as a negative thing. So what are your thoughts on labeling a child, on if it's okay? We'll get into the thing about, letting children know after, but just in general, what are your initial thoughts on having a child label, and if it's okay or if not?
Well, let me make my disclaimer in terms of my label. My friends say I have ADHD, right? So if you hear my thoughts jump from left to right, that's why, okay? If you've ever seen the movie Matrix,
yes,
where you have, that shows my age, it's, you have to step away. Matrix makes you step away from what everybody accepts as the norm. When you are parenting a child with a special need, you don't get to just flow along with everybody else. You have to really be woke. You have to really think about what's happening around you and what things mean, right? So the label has its value in, yes, finally I know what this is that my child is dealing with. The label allows you to know where to get help. This is autism spectrum and the child is having difficulty with communication. I need a speech therapist. I need an occupational therapist. It's a medical condition. I need a doctor and a pediatrician. So the label lets you know where to go. The label lets you know what concessions you can get. Ali, I'm going to leave you to read the comments because I can't read it and share and talk at the same time. And I want to see. So labels allow you to know where to go to get help. Yeah? Whether it's for the SDN, you need concessions, whether you need to get into a special school, and so on and so forth. Really and truly, beyond that, I see little value in the label. So we may tell the child what it's called, what these behaviors together are called, but it's far more important to understand your child. Because for a couple of reasons, she's clapping, for a couple of reasons, you know, there are now issues with the DSM. There are issues with whether or not all these different disorders are as they define them, right? Not everything fits neatly into a box. We're dealing with a human child. A lot of times, a child with a difficult or complex background has so many other things going on in addition. It's not sufficient to say that child has ADHD. You know, some of that hyperactivity may be aggravated because mom's a single mom. She's trying to make ends meet. The neighborhood is plenty gunshots going on. She can't give the structure. So just saying he's ADHD without giving the context of what else is aggravating, the child is frustrated, he's anxious, isn't always sufficient. You need to understand your child. Plus, your child may not fit the book. You may go look up ADHD and not everything's there, right? So what are the areas of difficulty for my child? What are the areas of strength for my child? And how do we roll forward? We know what it's called when we need to go, right? When we need to get help, we can give a name and so on. But we don't want to just sit with that. We really don't want to just sit with that. Yeah, so we can get into how we explain it to the child. But even our language, we have to really be careful not talking about the dyslexic child, but the child with dyslexia. It makes a big difference, yeah? And so everything not fits neatly. What are my child's issues and how do I help?
One thing that just kind of popped in my head, do you think that the labeling and somebody's perception of the labeling is tied to where they are in that grieving process? So like, let's say if
tell me more.
Kind of now figure it, you don't want to hear about labels. You don't want to, you know, call your child that word because you're not ready for it. But then maybe at some point when you reach more acceptance, you're like, well, yeah, okay, my child has autism, it's fine. It's just, you know, another aspect of my child.
I think what allows us to be more comfortable with the formal diagnostic title is the language we use. If we talk about the child has versus the child is. A lot of people back away from it too because it sounds as if you're just boxing my child in and there's no hope. That's all they are. I had a teacher who flung a test paper back to one of my kids and said, you know, you're too damn dyslexic, with all the red marks flung all over the paper. You know, she's still alive. I didn't eat her, but you know, those are the kinds of things. So the language, and yeah, depending on where you are in the grief process, and this is why I believe self-care and honesty is so important. I'm not ready to say the words yet. That's fine. I'm not ready to say the words yet. My child, I'll tell you, my child is struggling with.
That's so.
You know?
I mean, how you just put that there with just saying you're not ready to say it. Fine.
I'm not ready to say it yet. You know, I have to be the resource for my child. So I need to take care of me in order to be the resource for my child. So I have to take care of me first. Yeah, I am not ready to say it. It still hurts. People react badly when I say it, so I'm not ready for that yet. Okay? We don't owe anybody anything. We don't owe anybody anything.
One of the things you said just now,
all we can do is try.
Reminds me so much of how we think as OTs, which is that you see the child, you don't see the diagnosis. So even if
No,
the child
no.
comes to you with a diagnosis, it yes, okay, because it means that you kind of have one or two things that you'll be looking at to guide you and you can use
Hmm.
it to guide
Hmm.
you. But generally, you're not using the diagnosis to treat the child. You're using the child and the
Yeah,
information from
what
the
the
parent.
child can do, what, yeah.
Right.
A lot of my, yeah. So my one of my favorite girls years ago, she was diagnosed with serious dyslexia. Um, and this child's passion was to be a journalist.
Oh.
And, so we spent time figuring out how can you take notes? How can you write your notes, to do your interviews and type up your report? She's a successful journalist with one of our newspapers. I saw her note taking once, and honestly, I couldn't understand anything my beloved wrote. But she's doing it, you know?
In a way that
Um,
works for her.
it worked in a way that works for her. And that's our job. That's our job. You had to stop me talking, Ali. I'll keep going.
All right. Well, let's talk about letting your child know if letting your child know about their diagnosis, because this has come up before. I guess fairly recently with some of my maybe when they get into like that 9, 10-year-old kind of age, where especially with school, when things are starting to happen in school. And I know there's a friend of mine, her son right now, they're kind of in that place where they're trying to decide if to tell him that, well, he hasn't been diagnosed, but they're trying to decide if to tell him or not because they don't know. And meanwhile, I mean, he's obviously struggling with school, but they don't know if to tell him. And I keep telling him, yes, you should, because for him, it will be a relief for him to know this is why he has all these
Yes.
struggles.
Yes.
And
Let me
yes,
let
what
me
you think?
let me start. Let me start back and come forward because there's always a story. I'm doing this too long. I've sometimes had to tell parents when they come for an assessment, if you see the child looking or doing better after the assessment, it wasn't because this was therapy. It was simply that having somebody acknowledge that they were struggling, having somebody explain to them and listen to them about what that struggle was and why they were struggling can bring tremendous relief to the child. When a child can understand there's a reason why they're struggling,
Mm-hmm.
they take the blame off of themselves
Right.
and they can begin to own the situation and work with you to cope and find solutions. It's not you sitting in the classroom how many hours for the day, it's them,
Yeah. Yeah.
it's them. Um, can I comment, Cindy, on, and I'm not saying that's what you're saying, but just reading what you have there, but always keep praising your child, even for simple accomplishments. If sometimes when we do that without explaining what the difficulty is, the child begins to mistrust what we're saying because they know they're having a hard time and you're there praising for little things. And I'm not saying that's what you mean, Cindy, I'm just using the example. Um, but unless we've acknowledged with them, yeah, this looks like it's easy for a lot of kids, but you're having a real hard time doing this. And so that when parents come for the first session and they're ready to bring in the child, I said, let them know. Thank you, Cindy, for understanding. Let the child know, we know you've been having a hard time.
Mhm.
We're carrying you to somebody who can help us figure out why. That's it.
That's a nice way of putting it.
That's it. Because I've had parents drag children into my office and the child has no idea why they're there. I had one child tell me, Mommy said something wrong with me, that's why she bring me. Again, she's still alive. Um, but not telling your child robs your child of the chance to have agency and to have ownership. It puts undue pressure on you as the parent to have to carry everything, and it creates undue anxiety for the child, thinking something is very, very wrong, right? Because they know everybody else is doing it in class and they can't, whatever it is.
Right.
Yeah?
What
So we
about
might
on
as well be honest.
the flip side, though?
Uh-huh.
Because I have another parent who was asking me about it, and we were saying, yeah, you should tell him. But the other part of it was, and telling him, what about if he starts to use that now and
As an
say,
excuse.
well, yeah, say, well, no, I'm not doing that because, or, oh no, I forget because.
Right. So I am a big proponent of positive parenting. You said that, right? And you will let me advertise what we're doing next week,
Of
Saturday, when we
course.
finish, right? Very good. So I have found that, especially now COVID, where we all jam up together in the house and we have to be nice for longer. And when you have a special needs, a child with special needs, it's a great time to start being a positive parent, where we move from the punishment into the teaching, where we move from punishment into problem solving. So here's what would happen. These are your challenges. This is what's difficult for you because of how your brain works, because of what happened to your body, whatever is the reason. But this is what you need to accomplish. What do you want to accomplish for yourself? I want to be a whatever. Good. Here's how we get going. Somebody's addicted to punishing. We'll talk about that after. What is it you want to do? All right. It may be more difficult based on this condition that we're dealing with, but let's find a way. So the focus is always problem solving. At the same time, there are some basic human expectations. So whatever your disability or your special need, there are certain values that we espouse in the home. Good manners, right? Learning to wait your turn. So with a child with ADHD, it may take your whole lifetime to teach them to wait their turn, but you're still teaching. Yeah? And so there are certain expectations. You have homework to do. It's been difficult to do the way Miss said to do it. Let's find a way that you can get it done. It's getting done, right? So yeah, so so it's more of a journey with a child with special needs. I mean, like ADHD, they still need to learn the skills. This is why medication isn't sufficient. You medicate them, but they've never learned the social skills. So even if you're saying the same thing a million times for all of their childhood, by the time they're older, it's in there somewhere.
Correct. You
But you're
need
still
both.
teaching it. Yeah,
Everything.
right? And there may still be, and this is why I said it's a great time to become a positive parent, there may still be consequences for not following through on something that they were supposed to do. So do they always need special school? Do we have time to answer that? Or?
Okay, the schooling issue is, that's a whole topic by itself. I
That's a
think
whole seminar.
our school system is not set up for different learners.
No.
That's just how it is. Only set up, not even getting into if you have special needs or not. It's not set up for different learners, even for people who have
Honey,
quote
it's barely set up for learners, much less for
exactly,
different learners.
exactly.
Okay, just barely.
So I mean, right? The nice answer is no. Not everybody needs special schools, but how our schools are set up, it's it's going to be extra hard for students who learn differently to be able to cope with that school setting. Some schools have it together, and a lot of this comes down to teachers. There are teachers who are fantastic and they will work with your child in a mainstream setting and do what they have to do. But a lot of it comes down to the teachers and to the school and how the school is set up, and that is something that I am working on to try to change at a government level so that our mainstream system will work better for all students. So that, because there are too many students I see who don't need to be in a special school and they are sent there and it's not the right fit for them, but they don't have a choice because
I'm seeing some of the comments.
yeah, we
You
have a lot of questions
really,
and comments today.
yeah, you really have to become an advocate for your child. In Caribbean parenting, we just started doing stuff on self-care for parents, just thinking it was because of COVID. But everything I'm saying is coming back to that. I'm kind of amazed. We have to be our best selves, rested, exercised, energized, positive, because we have to go to battle for our children.
Right.
It means, attention issues run through my kids, my family. And so I had to literally walk my daughters through school where I know the teacher. I'm chatting with the teacher. What was there an issue? What can we work on? What behavior can we modify at home? And really be present to the school to assist them, because you may have teachers who are willing, who don't know as much as they need to, or don't have the freedom to do what you need to do. Yeah. And so you really become an advocate working with your teacher, with your school, because we don't have no grades at the special schools. We don't.
Exactly. I think
Gotta
a
work
lot
with
of
what we have.
times, because honestly, I wanted to have a school myself, but then in the last couple of years and really thinking about it, I realized that having another special school is not what we need. We don't
No.
need to have another school to box people in anymore. What we need is more to change the
The
mainstream
inclusion.
school so that
Yeah.
everybody could just
Yeah.
go to school and you
Yes.
don't have to
Yeah.
pay no thousands of
Mm-hmm.
dollars a term to go to
Yeah.
school. You just
Yeah.
go to
Go
school
to
and you get
school.
what you need in school.
Yeah. Yeah.
On the topic of parents advocating for your child and stuff, I just want to shout out one of the parents on this chat right now who this week we had an email, just back and forth email, and I was so happy with the way that this parent was able to advocate for her child and say, this is what I would like to do for my child. This is what I think my child needs, and this is what we are going to do because we think it's best. And
Yeah.
I mean, I
Yeah.
was reading the email and I was like,
Those are the parents that give you
it
real
was
courage. Yeah.
it was
Yeah.
a pleasure to read
Yeah.
it because it was like, yes, this is how you do it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Even if it's not gonna be the right thing for everybody, it's right for you and your child.
And that's what I said. Yeah, you get that same matrix thing. You got to come off the treadmill, because you can't just do like everybody else. You dress the child, you send them off to school. Magically, they learn, they come back home, everything's fine and hunky dory. You really have to wake up and pay attention, and
Especially the
craft.
mental health part.
Yeah, and craft a life that works for you.
I agree.
The drilling. I'm reacting to terms.
I think.
Can I comment on?
Yeah, we could start to do the comments. We could look through the comments and we could start to comment on.
If she's having trouble remembering since she was born, then drilling is not going to be the only. I'm assuming, I don't know if there's been a diagnosis or not, or an assessment. So what we need to do for our children is use their strengths, what are they good at, and see how these strengths can assist you in managing their areas of weakness. So if this child has a memory issue, then she needs help with remembering. She needs, flashcards. She needs, wet recipes, a little formula, depending on how bad it is. She needs, right, this is the same child? Right, different ways of remembering, right? Or assistance. Maybe I've had a child who had to be tumbling and spinning around the room in order to learn. He couldn't sit still, and he remembered better when he was moving.
Correct.
And so what are the strengths that can help this child cope with? Because some of the areas of challenge may not be able to, they can't be cured or fixed. They have to be coped with and managed. So this child needs call cards, this child needs reminders, this child may need less questions. And you adapt to suit. So movement works. So that's why you have to know your child.
Yeah.
It's not enough to just say, it's not enough to just call a label.
Unfortunately, I mean, coming back to school again and coming back to just how we think things are supposed to be, especially let's take the movements as an example. There are a lot of children I see where if they are allowed to sit on the floor or lie down on the floor or fidget with something, they will be fine. And that's what we as OTs we teach, that you find ways to make yourself move and get those fidgets and stuff. But of course, when we present that or take it to schools, it becomes, no, I don't want to fidget in my class. Even though you would go through little movements you could do, there is still that block because children are expected to sit and just, no, you don't try to get them to sit still. Because now normally what I would do if I have if I'm doing a talk on attention for teachers or parents or anybody, sometimes I would do a thing and go in and say, well, okay, we're going to do this talk. 100% of the time, you will find that people will be moving because everybody has to move. Everybody moves, everybody fidgets. And for children, it's the same thing.
Yeah, it's worse.
Yeah.
Can I share on this? Yeah, so our schools are
Yes.
not realistic even for the normal, healthy, mainstream learner. It's not realistic, yeah? In terms of helping our children know and own their own diagnosis or their own situation, I have some pointers on here I wanted to share and some examples of some kids I work with real quick, if I can.
Go ahead.
Okay, so what I do with the children in session, I keep saying kids, they're not baby goats. I'm sorry, it's a bad habit. What I do with the children in session, a lot of times as we're doing the assessment, because we're assessing the intellectual capacity, their level of achievement, we do emotional, where they are emotionally, behaviorally, and so on. As we're going through and we're finished with like the whisk or the wetch or the weat, I will say, did you notice how you did on this test? Does this happen in the classroom? Does this happen for you in the classroom? Is this where the problem is? And it's almost like a doctor and patient conversation we have about, I get from them, so how much of an issue is this? How do you cope? This is the area of challenge that you have because of how your brain functions. And so we need to work together to find solutions. And so it's a very adult conversation, and sometimes I do it in the presence of the parents so they realize what these children are capable of. And when I explain to them, these are the areas that you're strong in, these are the areas where you have challenge, how can we come up with some ways for you to cope? And I've had a little, she was 6 or 7, she was about 7, not just recently, can't sit still in the classroom and she gets in trouble with the teacher. And so she and I brainstormed, how can you move to the extent that you need to move to be comfortable and still get Miss work done? You know, and she came up with, well, maybe I could have a little something in my hand, but Miss will get upset. I said, well, how do we get around that? She said, well, can we tell Miss that I need to have this in my hand and I promise not to give it to anybody else and I'll keep it under my desk? I said, okay, so we can talk to teacher and get a teacher to say it. She said, well, can I put my leg under me, sit on my leg sometimes? Is that going to be okay? I said, do you need to talk to Miss about it? And we go back and forth, right? So she understood that what she was doing must not distract the others. Mm-hmm. So there were limits. You were going to say, Aliyah.
And it is the comment here with what might work for one child is distracting the other child. That's so very true. And a lot of these times when we work with children, we make sure that they know that if you are using this, fidget or if you
fidget spin, yeah.
You have to be mindful of those things. You can't be there clicking your pen and it's working for you, but everybody else is distracted and can't be there.
So I think this becomes a great opportunity where we can assume our children's capacity to understand, explain to them, and describe to them exactly that. You need this for you to function, but it must not be something that distracts others. So is there something else we can do? What do you need us to do as the adults? Well, she needed us to talk to teacher and principal. What can you handle for yourself? Well, I'll keep it to myself. I won't share it, and I'll try and get Miss work done. Right? And when we tell our children and we explain to them their condition, they can take ownership where they can. Can we hear more of what that comment is?
Okay, so I'll read out this comment here. My daughter, after she got seizures, she was very lost. She always said she wanted to die. She started to throw tantrums, bang her head on the walls since she was getting seizures, since she was 10 months old. And it was never like this. She started to get tired, cranky, cry a lot, and can't cope with schoolwork before she was a straight A student. One of the things I would suggest for that is to start with the pediatrician, to go back to a pediatrician, because that might be more on the medical side of things where you might have to look at medication or changing, if she is on medication, to change it. And then from there, then you can go into strategies and those kind of things.
A diagnosis is simply the identification of the nature of the illness. That's what a diagnosis is. It's not a label. It's identification of the nature of the illness. So if you don't know what's going on, we need to go ask.
Yeah, and find
what's going on. Yeah.
The most basic level you can, and then
you need to ask. Yes. So that's how you assess your providers as well. Can you ask the questions you need to ask? And are you satisfied with the answers you're getting? And it's an ongoing journey to advocate, to change, to upgrade, to adapt, right? But the point is, when children know what's going on with them, I've had little ones, 6 and 7 year olds, can advocate for themselves.
Correct.
Yeah.
And children they will let you know what they need, especially with a lot of
yeah.
You observe your child
Yeah.
and see what they
And
need.
they can the brain younger than yours, they could brainstorm ideas for how to cope because it's them in the school. So sit with them and go through the options.
Correct. I like what this parent says here. Although she's saying for her child, she's basically saying that the medication needs to change because they get older. And I
Yeah,
think that it is important to know
yeah,
that things change as they get older. So even if now things might be this way, if as your child gets older, you see different changes. Some of it is um, just part of the process, but also, especially if there's a condition as that, where it's maybe of a more medical thing, it would
yes,
be good to keep in touch with the pediatrician to say, well, okay, is this medication still working? Do we need to change it? I'm seeing maybe more headaches than before. What can be done? So the same thing I say, Alicia, it's good to have that relationship with whoever is on your team so that you can always, ask a question and get the information that you
yeah, the information. And more, you can put that child in front to ask questions for themselves at the doctor's
correct.
office.
Yes.
This child has, if this is a condition like epilepsy, that may be there all their life. Are you going to be running behind them worried all their life? So you can come forward with the child and allow them to ask their questions and come up with options and solutions and own it.
Because they
Yeah,
might
to the
have
extent.
questions that you mightn't have.
Yeah, yeah. They may have
You're the one
suggestions that
here.
you may not have.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The last thing we wanted to talk about today was,
Yes.
I think you touched on it already at first when we were talking about the whole grief process and owning it. But it's really about managing the expectations. Because I know I see this too, where I see some parents being really, really, really hard on their child. And I think it's because they expect them to be a certain way, or maybe don't understand the condition that their child has.
Yeah.
But like I said, I think part of it is related to that whole grief process, but to their whole set of other things going on, like the cultural, like what you said with the spiritual. Um,
Mm-hmm.
you kind of wondering what people think or what people will say. How can parents start to manage the expectations that they have for their child versus the strengths that their child has that maybe they're not seeing?
You have the opportunity to become a real warrior, a real champion for your child. You have the opportunity for your child to become a real champion for themselves by journeying with them step by step, right? We have to be so good to ourselves, really, really good to ourselves. In the sense of if your best friend, somebody you really love, came crying because they found out their child had a diagnosis that really broke them and they couldn't believe it. And what would you say to them? Wouldn't you hold them and comfort them and let them cry initially? So let's be honest. And this is for the fathers as well. I know we may not have many fathers on here, if at all, but men struggle,
Mhm.
you know? Men struggle with the idea, especially if it's their boy child, that he's not going to be who they thought he was going to be.
Yeah,
So let's accept our emotions, because when we can't accept our emotions, we can't accept theirs. So when the child feels like wanting to die or wanting to give up or is having a tantrum, we get upset, because we can't handle them being upset because it makes us upset and we're not dealing with our upset, so they can't get upset, you
correct.
know?
Yes.
And that's what self-care is about. When I have taken care, when I have acknowledged my needs and taken care of my needs, I can be your container. I need to be my child's container. Running outside is a beautiful idea.
Yes.
Better fat if it's raining. Take a run. Get wet and
I'm
come
going
back.
to stand under the gutters so that you could get
Whatever you need to do, short of whiskey and marijuana. Do what you need to do
legally.
to soothe healthily, to soothe yourself, so that you can be present to this child. Couple points:
Oh,
get community support, find other parents who are in similar situations. There are going to be those who are further along the journey, who have good ideas or know the journey that you're going to be on. We spoke about taking that time to grieve. Speak your truth. Speak your truth, but with another adult, not with that child.
right.
When you're present to the child, we need to be able to empathize, really be able to kind of sit where they are, and neither to pity them or to dismiss them. right? You see why we have to be healthy emotionally, so that we can sit when they are flailing up and banging and upset and crying and why am I like this? I'm stupid and whatever. I need to be able to really sit with them and understand, cry with them too, and be sorry with them too. And when they've soothed and they've gotten the attention, somebody said the child just needs attention. When they've gotten that attention from you and you look able to cope with the extent of their emotions, they can calm down and try again. And so what I find useful is the use of the conjunction and instead of but. I know this is hard, but we have to continue. That sounds terrible if you think about it. I know
Right.
you're hurting, but you have to go to school. You know,
Kind of
it
brushing
almost
it aside.
dismisses it.
Yeah.
I know this is hard, and we have to go now. So it's okay to be upset, and even with that upset, we'll do the best we can to keep going. So it's not like you have to pretend to be all right for us to move forward, right? So that I find a shift in anything in our language. You shift from the but to and. I love you, and that behavior needs to change or be corrected. I know you're upset. I know you're frustrated. I know you're angry, and this is difficult. And let's see if we can give it one more try today. One more shot, one more, one more step, and go forward. So get your community together, empathize, acknowledge feelings and problems, and brainstorm solutions. So instead of punishing, we're like, okay, how can we fix this? How can we do this? You want to be able to stay up with your friends tonight, but medication makes you go to sleep at a certain time. Okay, how can we make that happen? The child will tell you, oh, mommy, okay, that don't make no sense. I can't do that. What else can you do instead? And you become a coach.
Right.
You become a coach, you become an advocate, you become a consultant, and you keep putting that child forward because it's going to be their life. But to do that, you have to see about yourself.
True.
You have to see about yourself.
Like in the planes where they say, put your mask on first.
Exactly. And we have to completely, Dr. Diane Douglas said, you have to cut down your shame tree. You can't be worrying about what the people thinking. Cut down your shame tree, it's gone.
This question, how to nicely assist a parent whose focus is more
I saw that.
on the child. What do you think about that one?
I've had that in my office. I had one woman who left when I told her the child had Tourette's. Never came back. There are two things happening for your child. The diagnosis, whatever that disability or disorder is, and their self-concept. If I have a child who has had that disability paid attention to in every possible way, but their self-esteem and their self-concept has been allowed to fall apart, that child is not going to get very far. If I have put all my energy, or the majority of my energy, into believing in this child and supporting this child and becoming who that child wants to be and needs to be, and finding ways to do it with that disability, and I put more work here, that child is going to be okay. They're going to be okay.
So it's where you put your focus.
It's where you put your focus. Preserve the human being in front of you who has that disability.
And again,
or that difficulty.
Strengths, and then
focus on their strengths. What is it you want? Yeah. What is it you want to do? I had a family come in for a young man, I'll make it short, who couldn't do the math, not for nothing, wasn't paying attention in class. He getting licks all Howard, they're not getting anywhere. When I saw the child, all I saw was this child was a brilliant artist and an amazing runner, and I said, get him into a track and field club, find ways for him to support his art. We'll sort out the maths. We'll get a math tutor if we have to, and we'll sort out the maths. But put that child where he's excelling.
Correct.
You don't need a career at taking maths. Let's get us a track and field scholarship, and we'll sort out the rest. But let's see where we put our focus.
I just say that I have a parent who her child, they don't see me anymore, but you see me for a long, long, long time. Was never in any school setting because we knew that wasn't gonna happen. But he really, really, really likes photography and restoring pictures and that kind of thing. And they found somebody who would teach him computer programs and things. And I was like, that's his career right there. You just keep him
Yeah.
doing that. I mean, but he could learn everything else on his own time.
Yes.
But he already has a path that he could go into as a career and make money.
Yes.
And, you know, he's
What you
14 now.
what you want, yes. What you want is this child's independence. Um, you don't need to catch a ball, claim two numbers, right? What you want is this child's independence, right? Um, and so within your means, Aliyah, you'll read that one out for me, right?
Yes.
Within your means, whatever is possible. My own goddaughter had her, well, she came by me for assessment. She ended up being my goddaughter. Dyslexia and serious learning disability. And she is now the most amazing fashion designer. So that's what she wanted.
Wow.
Brilliant, brilliant artist. You know, I bought her paintings. And the rest for when you find the way by which you learn or that you're passionate about learning, you will put yourself through the pain of learning it
Correct. Correct.
to achieve what you want. That's the whole point. You will put yourself through the pain of learning it or the difficulty, or it'll become easier as they get older to accomplish what you want to accomplish. And that's how it works. Yeah, we
Let me
gotta come
just
off the
read this
treadmill.
one more comment here. And then after that, we could wrap up a little bit. I know we could talk about this for
Forever. Yes, Alicia
long,
can talk.
but all right. One of the things that somebody's saying here that is so important is yes,
Yes.
for parents being a child's advocate, but be careful not to become bullies. And this is so
No.
important,
Yeah.
especially with social media, and you have different chats and people saying, well, I do this for my child, and this is what you have to do, and if you do it in that way, you're wrong. And know what might work for your child might work for your child, and for another child it might not be the same. So just be careful that, and two, everybody is on their own journey. So wherever you are on yours, great, but it doesn't mean that somebody else is on that same in that same space as you are.
When I have done my self-work, I will recognize the extent to which I need to be grateful and humble. The extent to which I sometimes have to take licks on being an advocate mean you taking licks on the child's behalf.
Yes. Yeah.
It means because you standing up for your child, it means the principle both in you. All right. Being an advocate means the other parents watching you cross-eyed because you're letting this child carry on so, but you know why. So that's what being an advocate means. You taking the licks. By the time I'm finished with that, I should be, ought to be so tired. I don't have time to
Yeah.
really bother with anybody else.
Yeah.
Yeah?
Just doing your thing.
Yep. Yep.
What I want to say, first of all, before we close off, is thank you so much to all of you parents for being so honest and so raw, especially in these comments. I think
Yes.
especially today,
Yes.
we get a lot of comments that are hard to read. It's hard to read the comments and still
Yes.
and not kind of let it get to you while you're having a
Yes.
conversation. But thank you all for being so honest and willing to share stories with all of us, even though obviously it can't be hard for you to put yourself out there. But thank you for your willingness to do it.
I get to advertise what I'm doing. Are we done?
We finish, but yeah, you can talk about
Just check us, the Caribbean Parenting Initiative. We have a Facebook page. We have a seminar, well, a focus group coming up, self-care for parents, on Saturday the 27th. You'll see it on our Facebook page, where we really talk about the need to take care of ourselves. We continue with that, right? And that's the one parent here who is there with us. And maybe we'll do more about parents of children with special needs, because that's one person on our team. So come join us and learn more about positive parenting so we can move past the punishment and move into the advocacy and the encouraging our children to be their best selves. That's all I can add.
And thank you, Alicia, for being here today and sharing your wisdom. It was, for me,
You're very
although
welcome.
I love all these sessions, obviously, but I learned so much
Don't be
from it.
biased.
So I know that I have to share this. I know I have to share this video out, even though it wasn't really what I wanted to do. But because I know that I will need to go back and look at this video again, because there's so many things that we spoke about that I know I
Yeah.
don't have to remember. I will have to send out the video because I know it's something that everybody needs to, they need to hear it, and they need to be able to go back to it and be like, oh yeah, that's what Alicia said. So thank you so much for today.
Thanks for having me. This was fun. I think Zoom is life. I'm never going out to the office again. So thank you. This was wonderful.
Yes, I will send the video to everybody. All right. Enjoy your weekend. Thank you everybody for coming again.
Thanks everybody. Thanks, Aaliyah.
Next week is our speech therapy session. So we'll have Nadia Goodman on. So all of these speech and language questions and communication questions like sign language and all those things, we are going to talk about that next week. Thank you. Enjoy your weekend.
Bye-bye.
All right. Bye.